Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council regular meeting set for Tuesday, September 27th here, 2022, just a little after 12 p.m. This meeting will be conducted via Zoom and telephonically, and it's in response to the declared state and local emergencies due to the novel coronavirus and limited public access to the Hall of Administration, consistent with the governor's executive orders N-29-20. This Ventura County Climate Emergency Council meeting will be conducted via Zoom and telephonically. And so let's roll to item number 2, which is the roll call, please. Go ahead, Clay.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Ferris.
Here.
Chair Schnapp.
Here.
Councilmember Kessley, I do not see. Councilmember Corolla has already informed us he's absent today. Councilmember Para.
Here.
Thank you. I do not see Councilmember Chavez in the group. And then Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum present. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Item number 3 is our Pledge of Allegiance. And Richard, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And so then we are at item number 4, approval of minutes from the August 23, 2022 Climate Emergency Council meeting. Is there a motion to approve minutes?
Motion.
I'll
to
move.
approve.
Okay, so was that Council Member Ferris first and then?
I beat him to it.
All right, so we have
I'll
you
second.
making the motion. All right, and Richard seconding it. Okay, very good. Could we have a roll call, please?
Sure thing. Thank you very much. Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Chair Schnapp.
Yes.
Councilmember Para.
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes,
Motion passes.
Very good, thank you. All right, item number 5 is where we take time out on our agenda for public comments for items not on the agenda. And so, Clay, have you received anything from the public?
I have not received any additional public comments for items not on the agenda.
Okay, and so I do see folks who are attending this meeting as the public. Would any of you like to speak on items not on the agenda? You could take yourself off of mute. Okay, so seeing none then, let's go on. There's correspondence agenda and you have the items listed on your agenda there.
There are no items that require discussion on the correspondence agenda today.
Okay, very good. And then let's go into our regular agenda. We'll start with item number 12. That's the resolution authorizing remote teleconference meetings of this Ventura County Climate Emergency Council for 30-day period pursuant to Government Code Section 54953 Subdivision E of the Ralph M. Brown Act. Clay, do you have anything here for us on this?
There is no change on this. It's the same as it has been for the last several months.
Okay, very good. And so any comment? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember White.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Baldwin. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember White.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Chair Schnapp.
Yes.
Councilmember Para.
Yes.
And Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes,
Motion passes.
Okay. Then let's go to item number 13, which is an update from our county executive office staff. So take it away, Clay, and just to let everybody know that this is Clay's last meeting with us.
So that is part of my update. So thank you, everyone. So part of my update today is just to let everyone know that today will be my last meeting. My last day with the county as an employee is going to be Thursday, the 29th. Alejandra Taez is going to be the main point of contact for Ventura County Climate Emergency Council items. And so I'll make sure that this council and the council members have that contact information, but the program, email, and those sorts of things, those all remain the same. So that VCCEC at ventura.org email, which is for kind of general program emails that we sometimes send out and sometimes have things come in on. That's going to remain the same, but also I'll be sharing Alejandra's contact information. And for anyone that doesn't already know, Alejandra Taez is our sustainability officer. So she is who I normally report to. And so who will in the long term manage this program is yet to be determined, but in the interim, Alejandra is going to manage it directly. Alejandra, do you have anything you want to add?
I was going to mention we're hiring, and if you know any candidates, invite them to apply. So that, the job is posted.
Thank you.
Yep, we would really appreciate any contacts or folks using their networks to help us find a great candidate. So someone really strong to kind of make sure implementation of our climate action plan is going on strong. With that, I wanted to go to probably the more meaty portion of my update for today, and that's to talk about on September 20th, I took an item from the Climate Emergency Council to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors, and so presented two proposals to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors, and that was one that was for a climate change public outreach and education program, and a proposal for to adopt a resolution capping emissions, methane emissions from abandoned, idle, and orphan oil and gas wells and pipelines. So those were the two items that went to the Board of Supervisors. So they received a presentation from me. They heard from a handful of members of the public, including Dick Baldwin, or including Councilmember Baldwin and Councilmember White, although both of them spoke as individuals rather than speaking on behalf of the Climate Emergency Council. So they're both very clear when they made their statements there. Other public speakers that spoke on the item were Liz Campos, Roseanne Witt, and Jan Dietrich. We really appreciate their participation in the public process. And what we had as a result of that is the board voted unanimously to approve a motion that had three parts to it. So part one was to support a public education campaign as recommended by the board, but to include reaching out to the Air Pollution Control District to see if they would like to partner with us in producing materials. Part two, to ask our legislative analysts to go out and find out what it takes to see if the County of Ventura can capture funds coming from the federal and state government on capping wells so that they do not leak methane. And part three, to continue efforts to ensure that that the Climate Emergency Council can continue to quantify greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a three-part motion. One of the things I would say is the recording is available. Anyone can listen to it. That is how I wrote it down from what I heard on that recording. The official minutes have not been approved yet from that meeting. And so that's going to happen during the next meeting of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. And so if anyone wants to see those official minutes after they're approved, I encourage you to do so. There was some additional discussion for anyone that's not familiar with looking at those recordings. There's a lot of context that you can gather between the presentation that staff gives and the public comments, and then the deliberative process that goes on. So I would really encourage anyone that's particularly interested in the item to watch that recording and kind of see how that motion, what you end up with, was made in the conversation that was had there. So that is it for the most part on that item. We do expect that there's going to be some follow-up actions that are going to be required to be taken by staff, both in the Government Affairs Division as well as Sustainability. Does anyone, I'll answer questions on this. There's a couple more items I wanted to front load or talk about before I finish my update, but that's the really big one. And I think that I've shared some of the links and those sorts of things associated with the board item. But if this council would like me to, I'd be happy to recirculate those so people know how to get those. The other things I wanted to mention was on that same day, and actually the very next agenda item. So the one that I presented was agenda item 48 on September 20th. And actually, if you were to look at the recording, the item starts at 4 hours, 3 minutes, and about 10 seconds, and it ends at about 5 hours, 0 minutes, and 9 seconds. The motion is made at approximately 4 hours and 57 minutes and 10 seconds. So those are the timestamps that for anyone that's interested in taking a look. It'd be important. That's again, item 48 on September 20th. The Ventura County Resource Management Agency's Planning Division did a general plan annual progress report to the Board of Supervisors on the same day under agenda item 49. And so what they were doing is reporting on overall implementation progress. But since 81 of 185 general plan programs are CAP related, and those are things that people in this council and people interested in this topic might be interested in having a look at. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that there was something that it's in the correspondence agenda too, but on September 13th, there was an item that went to the Board of Supervisors from the General Services Agency and the County Executive Office's Sustainability Division, talking about fleet vehicle and public charging stations and fleet charging stations. So in total, the board approved for the General Services Agency and Sustainability Division to move forward with a project that should result in 42 fleet serving charging ports, 42 additional EV or plug-in hybrid vehicles, and 20 public serving charging ports. And so these are all related to the Southern California Edison Charge Ready program. And so there is a certain amount of funding that was put into this so that we could pursue it from the Board of Supervisors. And so it was approved during that item. And then it allows us to participate in that Charge Ready program, which allows us to use outside resources to make sure these things happen. A couple other items. I wanted to mention it because a press release just went out yesterday, but the Sustainability's new website, which has been up for a couple of months, but we just officially put out that website. So this was kind of our official launch, just went out yesterday. And so that's intended to act as a clearinghouse of information. And you can find all sorts of things that the Sustainability Division and sometimes other agencies or partners are doing that are aligned with our work. And so we've got things like our climate programs. Ventura County Tree Coalition is helping coordinate Oaktober events. And so those are things that are related to community greening. And so we've got a whole network of organizations that are participating in that. We've got all the classes and forums associated with our Tri-County Regional Energy Network, those populate into the calendar option in that Sustainability Division website. And then we've got special events like those from the Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance, like the Ride and Drive events that happened for National Drive Electric Week. Not only this week, but today. So there's one going on at the county's government center right now. So the people sitting on this meeting probably won't be able to participate in that specific one, but it's going on right here at the outside of this building, so people can do test drives and get to know the vehicles and those sorts of things. So, and that is it for my update. If there are comments or questions, then I'd be happy to take them.
Great, thank you, Clay. Any questions for Clay from the council? Comments?
Is the sustainability website different than the website we're using? The address?
So it is a different one. So the Climate Emergency Council website right now is still in what I would consider a temporary website, because I'm trying to figure out how to take all of the information, because you guys have a lot of content, and roll it over to our main website without making it clunky. And so that's something I'm actually hoping to do and finish before I leave. But for right now, the Climate Emergency Council website, you can still access it through the main sustainability website. So how that works is when I share information with the public, typically it's going to be through sustain.ventura.org, which is our sustainability division website. But there is a specific section related to our climate action programs where the Climate Emergency Council is highlighted. And if someone wants more information, it navigates them to this site that the Climate Emergency Council uses.
So I've been using the link for us the last few days, sending it out to a bunch of people. And will they be able to get to this, or do they have to go through the sustainability webpage to get to this?
They can still get to it. We haven't stopped using anything that we've been using, so that'll remain available.
Okay.
That's a good question, though. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Clay? So just for, maybe for Mary Ann's purposes, is that the two items that were mentioned by Clay that were presented to the County Board of Supervisors for approval, they go through our committee, they, come up through this group. And then when we approve them, they go to planning, and planning takes a look at it. Not to say that they're going to change anything, but We do need to go through the planning division, and then it actually gets scheduled for a board of supervisors meeting. So just to let you know, that's the process. All right. All right, so then thank you, Clay. Thanks for a very informative report, and you'll be missed. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to item number 14, which is a receive and file our guest speaker. And that's a presentation from Bill Camarillo related to organic waste recycling, SB 1383, procurement and opportunities, and reductions in short-lived climate pollutants from organic waste. And so Bill Camarillo is the Chief Executive Officer of Agriman. Go ahead, Bill. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. I learned a lot in very short order. I didn't know there was a sustainability website in the county, and there's a lot of information on that. So I'm gonna definitely go comb through that and everything you guys are working on, because it seems like you've been working pretty hard at trying to get carbon emissions reduced in Ventura County. So congratulations. So I have been with Agriman since its inception 30 years ago. We started the company, and today we've become the largest organics waste recycling company in the state of California. We serve well over 200 communities throughout the state in 15 counties, from Southern California through Northern California, all the way up to Sacramento. So a lot going on in climate change. And as you know, the governor has decided to double down and make California the California way, with probably some of the most aggressive climate change legislation in the world. And we've been at it for probably nearly a couple decades now, since Schwarzenegger passed the 2006 climate change law, where basically focused on 5 major industry sectors, all of which impacted the waste industry, from transportation to energy to wastewater and agriculture, all of those that we work in today. So I was going to go through a presentation on what SB 1383 has done for the waste industry and the benefits that it's creating on greenhouse gas emission reductions at landfills. So I'm going to share my screen, get through a presentation here. Hopefully you can see my screen. So Agriman, like I said, has been in business 30 years, and we started recycling organic waste in the early 90s when the Assembly Bill 939 passed, which I'll talk to you a little bit about. And fast forward, it's become all about short-lived climate pollutants and climate change and climate adaptation and agriculture and waste and water. So our mission collectively has been to advance innovation through regenerative soil science through the use of organic waste solutions to combat and reverse climate change. And we do that by partnering with waste haulers, municipalities, agriculture, landscape, and consumers to try and cool the planet. We have an integrated approach that uses diverting organic waste from landfills to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So methane at landfills has an 80-time more potency than CO2 on a short-lived climate pollutant, which is pretty important. And even though the landfills today, the newer ones, are pretty sophisticated with gas capturing systems, there's still about a 25% fugitive emission off landfills where methane is escaping through the soil. So by recycling organic waste and turning it into rich nutrient compost to put back in the soil, we can repair degraded agricultural lands and private sector properties to start sequestering carbon in the soil. And we kind of do that through climate smart and regenerative agriculture primarily. Here are a bunch of the laws that I have lived through since the early 90s. AB 939 was the first one, 50% diversion of waste from the landfills by the year 2000, or the jurisdictions faced a $10,000 a day penalty. Organic waste at that time, primarily green waste and wood waste, made up 30% of the 50% fraction that needed to be diverted. After 2006 climate change bill was passed, a lot of other legislation got passed to try and not only focus on recycling, but diversion from landfills for commercial recycling, commercial organics reduction. And then ultimately Assembly Bill 1594. So people thought they were pretty crafty and they would take green waste from homeowners. They would grind it and they would use it as alternative daily cover at the landfills to cover the trash at night. And then the next morning they put the trash on top of the ground green waste. So you weren't really removing the green waste from the landfill. You just called it something different. And they did that so they could meet AB 939 saying they were diverting the use of soil instead of green waste. And in 2014, they passed this bill to say that's part of the climate change problem that we're having. So in 2020, they could no longer use ground green waste as alternative daily cover at landfills. So that had a big impact on the waste industry. And then in 15, the state mandated that each county had 15 years of composting capacity. And then ultimately SB 1383 has been the most disruptive piece of legislation to the waste industry, which is a short-lived climate pollutant law. And that we have to reduce 75% of all organic waste from landfills by the year 2025, which seems like is around the corner now. Or each jurisdiction will also face penalties up to $10,000 a day. Here's the massive undertaking. The data collected on the amount of organic waste in the landfills was done back in 2014, and they call that the base year. And then when the legislation passed, they said that by the year 2022, we need to have 50% removed. Well, we are in 2022. And that is roughly 11.5 million tons we should have diverted already. And I can tell you that 458 cities in California and 58 counties are barely getting started, and no one's even close to getting that done. And then by 2025, we should be down to only landfilling 5.7 million tons of organic waste in the landfill. So the orange line is the progressive amount of organics going into landfill producing methane. So it's about a 17 million ton diversion requirement that has to happen in the next 2.5 years without enough infrastructure to do it. So as an example, we've spent the last 10 years trying to get our Limonera project permitted in and around Santa Paula to manage these tons. And we just got that entitlement this year in February. So we are trying to fast track the design and construction of that facility, which will handle about 300,000 tons a year in Ventura County, which is really only half the county's volume. There's about 600,000 tons in the county that has to get diverted in the next couple of years. So we still have a lot of work to do there. Our business sector is truly a circular economy. From the point in time in which organic waste gets collected from residents, commercial or municipalities by waste haulers or municipalities themselves, and then gets transferred to an Agromin-like facility that's using technology and manufacturing techniques. We make over 300 different types of products out of the organic waste stream, such as energy, organic fertilizers, animal feeds, and soil amendments to be put back in the soil. And we do that through innovative and advanced technologies to transform those products back into nutrient-rich products. For us, compost is like flour to a cake mix, and we're constantly repairing soil through redistribution and restoration of commercial, municipal, and consumer products. A little bit about what's going on in the soil. So almost most science experts believe that the solution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions out of the atmosphere is in the soil. And the challenge is the soils are so depleted that over the last century and a half, the use of chemicals in agriculture have reduced our soil's carbon to less than 1%. It used to be around 3 to 7% where the soil respirates. So soil is alive and it likes to respirate around 3 to 7%, meaning that the biology in the soil is consuming carbon and releasing carbon along with the plant's consumption of carbon. So if we could just move the soils back to 3%, which is on the lower end across most of the global agriculture, you could actually consume over 1 trillion metric tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So Mother Nature knows how to fix itself. The challenge is we're not going to like it. And whether people believe in man-made climate change or not, doesn't matter. The climate is changing. Here's how compost works and why the state has mandated the organic waste diversion mandates and legislation and the healthy soils initiatives as part of that cap and trade program. Is in today's rangelands, we are losing carbon to the atmosphere because a plant will consume carbon out of the atmosphere and it will, through its root system, put that carbon in the soil for biology to solubilize the nutrients that the plants need to grow. But because there's very little carbon there today, it can really only pull enough out of the atmosphere to barely feed itself, so therefore releasing more carbon back into the atmosphere. With the use of compost to try and help store more organic matter in the ground, the root systems grow deeper. There's enough biology and carbon in the compost that helps the plants grow more vigorously, which means they're going to consume even more carbon out of the atmosphere. They're going to use less water. And then the plant does what it was meant to do, and it starts to store carbon. So that's why the state has passed not only the legislation to divert organic waste, but also healthy soils initiatives to put compost back in the ground. So a lot of farmers today are paying attention to climate smart ag through regenerative farming. And that pressure is coming from the consumers. So consumers of manufacturing of clothing, food products, animal feeds are getting pressure from retailers that are saying, hey, if you don't start paying attention to restoring and regenerating the soil, we're not going to procure products from you. So Patagonia was probably one of the most effective. They started a whole new division called Patagonia Provisions that's making food for their customer base that only bought their food from farmers that were practicing regenerative farming. So then that just kind of keeps, multiplying, where more companies are being required to do that. Big agriculture is now calling it climate smart ag, because regenerative farming is a little bit more boutique than climate smart ag. So that's really starting to catch in agriculture. Agriman's been leading the way in organics waste recycling for a very long time. We've learned a lot of lessons over the years, helping other cities throughout the state on how to meet these mandates that are pretty aggressive, and for the private sector to figure out how to build infrastructure, and communities themselves to build infrastructure that would allow the waste to be diverted to compost centers, anaerobic digesters, and pyrolysis technologies. We've been doing this through waste diversion recycling mandates by finding innovative science and technology pieces of equipment and manufacturing techniques to produce products that can help us with regenerating the soil. Agriman has become a counterpunch to climate change. We're an ambassador to how all of this works in the waste sector for most jurisdictions, and we become the gold standard to making products. So recently, we just provided all the products for the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles for the Rams, for the Getty Centers in Los Angeles, for the Disneylands, the Anaheim stadiums, all new construction projects. And we're the biggest supplier to the retail lines of products like Miracle Grow and Dr. Earth and things like that. Our process is pretty sophisticated. We do a lot of feedstock preparation. If you can imagine, everything that's being thrown away is being thrown away for a reason. It's no longer has a value to the person that purchased it. We get all kinds of organic waste streams in, and we have to determine what they're going to become, whether we're going to make renewable energy out of it, we're going to make a biomass product out of it, or we're going to make a compost feedstock out of it to turn into soil amendments that will go back into all these different categories on the right-hand side. We're stretched across the state. We serve a lot of communities, and we're building more and more facilities throughout the state. And it's a very interesting time to try and figure out how to manage all these tons back to the soil. This is the new Limoneira project that we're really excited about. It's 70 acres. It will handle 300,000 tons a year, mostly for the West County, in our partnership with Limoneira Company, who is steadfast and is a land steward in Ventura County. We currently operate on 15 acres within the yellow square, so you can see where the site's going to be located. We put it strategically in the center of the farm to not impact anyone. So Limoneira owns everything around the compost center. And they are a big consumer of the compost that's generated from this property. This is a whole new portal that we've created. So part of SB 1383, there is a procurement mandate. This is where it gets really interesting. So 1383 not only mandated the diversion of all this organic waste to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it also requires that all jurisdictions procure compost at 8% in tons of their population. So Agriman knew that was going to be a monumental task, knowing that cities are not necessarily in the space of buying compost or mulch or even knowing what to do with it. So we created a portal that could help them with sourcing, fulfillment, and application of how to use compost in the communities to reduce water consumption in parks and store carbon. The value of compost is water savings. It's probably one of the biggest things that compost does. It holds 20 times its weight in water. So when you can get it in the ground, you can save a tremendous amount of water in ag and landscape. It reduces the need for chemical fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. And it also helps sequester carbon in the soil, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and it actually just makes your soil and plants healthier. Here's our platform. We do an assessment for the jurisdiction. We just did one for the city of Ventura. They had to use 8,000 tons of compost. They didn't know what to do with it. We did an assessment, found out they had 700 acres of parklands. So just using a 1/4 inch of compost, it turns out they actually needed like 12,000 tons. So then we define the quality of the product they need. We can also offer brokering services to jurisdictions that don't want to do it, so they can still be in compliance. Here's what the calculator looks like on the website. This one's for the city of Oakland. They go in, put their city. It's tied to the database of the Department of Finance in California. So it gives the calculation on the amount of compost. In this case, they had to use 20,000 tons, or they can buy bioenergy or renewable natural gas as another solution, or mulch. We also provide them with all the reporting they need to turn back in on where they're at with their procurement, how much more they need to purchase, with all the backup information required, the product analysis, and all the delivery slips. So it's at their fingertips with the portal. Here's the park project we just did in Ventura. So we took the Montalvo Park and we did one application showing them how to use compost and turf. And you can see between June and March, that's about a 9-month period of time. Just one application actually helped green up the park, reduce water consumption, and we started moving the needle on storing carbon in the park. This is a carbon farming project we're doing for Sacramento County and City. It's called the Van Vleck Ranch. It's a working land, 5,000 acre farm where they are raising cattle, and we have a compost center actually on the ranch, and we're using compost derived from the greenways generated by the city of Sac, county of Sac within this ranch to store carbon there. So there's a lot going on that's positive and doesn't have to cost a fortune to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Not everybody can afford, right, to buy electric cars and put solar and all that good stuff, but they can help at the curb by putting the organics in the organics barrels so that those can be diverted from landfills to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then as we continue to work with the voluntary carbon market, I truly believe that our parklands and working lands within the county can be carbon sequestration properties to store carbon in and around our communities. So with that, I'm going to stop and answer questions.
All right, thank you very much, Bill Camarillo. Are there any questions from the council members? Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Baldwin.
So number one, are you willing to share your slideshow? And follow up, can I use part of those slides to show other people? And So I was going to talk about what I'm doing later in the meeting, but should I talk about it now, Clay?
If you think it's relevant, then you can kind of include that because it sounds like you need to include that to have your question make sense for Bill anyway. So
I've been meeting with the farm advisors people, a couple of them, and trying to figure out how to get farming into the mode of reducing greenhouse gases to the extent they can, and working with Ben Faber. I on Friday afternoon sent out an email to a bunch of ag-related people, Farm Bureau, Department of Agriculture, and what have you. And the things you're talking about kind of sounds like things that may link together with what you're doing, at least conceptually, not with maybe with your business, maybe not with your business. But like I told this group of people, I'm an engineer and I don't know anything about ag. And so I'm trying to bring them together because as a council, we're supposed to find ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from whatever Ventura County. So I could use, you've got a lot more knowledge than I do, obviously. So I'd like to use your information, and I'd also like maybe to meet you and become a little smarter on this thing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And we work with all the farmers and the RCDs and the extension, and Ben knows all about what we're doing. So the California Department of Food and Agriculture has been annually giving out grants for the use of compost in different levels. And if some of the big growers will take the $250,000 grant, they have to do a greenhouse gas emissions study. And we recently did that with the RCD and Limoneira Company. And that's happening statewide. We've done it also in Merced County with Bowles Farming. And we truly believe that agriculture can help store carbon, especially in the permanent crops, in the rows where they're not tilling the soil. So part of that regenerative farming is to not till the soil and release the carbon, to use biochar as a mechanism to get carbon credit monies. So farmers are very predictable. Money's always an issue because they're competing worldwide. They want to do the right thing. Saving water through the use in compost and mulch reduces greenhouse gas by pumping less, using less chemicals. So I'm all in. We know a lot about this. I'm happy to give you the presentation. The more we tell people, the more people learn, and hopefully they can change some of their practices to help this whole effort.
So are you okay with Clay sending me your email address and start a
Absolutely.
conversation?
I'm an
Thank you.
open book. I'm easy to find. Bill@agriman.com.
Okay. All right.
Very good,
Thank you.
thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you. So thanks for the presentation. It was really enlightening. It was really nice to see kind of this particular lens on how this area can help with the overall challenges we have globally. So from your perspective, do you believe that it is like, what's the main challenge to help this particular area, like help in the reduction of greenhouse gases? Is it like we have plenty of places to put them, we just don't have enough compost to do that? Or is it that we have plenty of compost, we don't have enough jurisdictions or areas in order to place it? Or what are the factors that can help us understand how we can help with this process if it is a beneficial one for the overall goal?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And that's got a multiple pronged answer to it. One of the biggest challenges is infrastructure. It shouldn't take 10 years to get a compost center permitted that's required by the state of California. And thank God we didn't quit. You know, it took grit, perseverance to be able to get something completed that was mandated by the state in the county. Secondly, people are excited to participate today. On the organics recycling side, and again, we're slowed down by design and construction because of the pandemic. And you know, when a lot of the government workers weren't working from work anymore, it's hard to go and get permits to actually start construction. And now that they're coming back, they're, woefully behind, which we understand. So that's been a big delay. Supply chain's been a big delay for equipment and things like that. And then with the procurement side, the jurisdictions aren't sure how to use the compost. So a huge education is needed on how to use it. Believe it or not, farmers don't know how to use compost. They're so drunk on chemicals and figured that out. They're like, well, heck, how do we use compost? It's more of a slow release nutrient product. And they're so used to the chemicals and how the chemicals use and how the plants react. So we're doing a lot of education on soil health we have a chemical engineer on staff that works with their agronomists to show them how the use of compost. So there's infrastructure issues, there's supply chain issues, there's construction issues, there's education on the use of compost. I think society is ready to embark on diverting organic waste and using the compost bins. But it's a handful.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from Councilmember? Oh, yes. Go ahead, Councilmember Baldwin.
So farmers are always worried about money. That seems to be the number one thing. So is compost cheaper than or more expensive than fertilizers?
It's not more expensive. So you're right about the money. So farmers are worried about money, and they have to be, or else they go out of business. So from the timing perspective, when you're using chemicals, and primarily they use a fertilizer matrix called NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And they use those three elements to determine how fast the plant grows, how fast it flowers, and how fast it fruits, because they're trying to time the market to get the most amount of money for their crop. And they're competing with the world for the same crop. Whether you're growing strawberries in Oxnard or Mexico, they're all competing for the same market. Compost is more of a soil health nutrient that they can't predict when it's going to release its NPK. So that's where they struggle with a little bit using it. Organic farmers are usually a little bit better at figuring that out, but less than 1% of agriculture is organic. So I think we got to show them how to use it. We got to show them how to save money. We've got to show them how to get it to work for them, which is what we're doing, so that they will consume more of it. And trust me, when fertilizers quadrupled in price, we're selling more compost than we ever have because it's a lower cost option for them.
So following up on that, fertilizer has, okay, I'm not speaking with a lot of knowledge here, but it's my understanding fertilizer has a pretty quick kick when
It
it
does.
goes
It's
into
like-
the soil.
Yeah, it's like
Whereas
steroids.
compost is slow,
Yeah.
but this would compost applied consistently over time eventually maybe catch up with the speed of fertilizer?
It does. It's an investment in the soil. And because a lot of farmers rent the ground, they have no reason to want to fix someone else's soil. They want to get in, farm, harvest, and leave. And that's
Oh.
part of the challenge too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting industry.
All right, go ahead, Councilmember White.
Yeah, Bill, I want to thank you very much. Such an impressive story that you're telling. As a person who's dedicated to trying to come up with ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in my engineering business, I try to do that. And on this council, I try to do that, come up with proposals that will reduce carbon dioxide and methane, for example, into the air. And to hear your presentation and to hear everything that you and AgroMin have done, boy, it really gives me hope that that we can tackle this climate change problem. So thank you very much. Most impressive.
Yeah, I think what you guys are doing is great to reduce, but we also have to store, and that's where people forget. It's, I try not to simplify it too much, but if you have kids and your kids keep taking the toys out of the box and don't put them back, you get a little frustrated. Well, we've taken a lot of carbon out of the soil and put it in the atmosphere, and now it's time to put some of it back and to help rebalance the earth. Even if we didn't do it, even if mankind didn't do it, and I never want to have that argument, we just need to do something to get it back because of what's going on in the with the weather and the environment doesn't look good, and we need to help it. Mother Nature needs our help so it can repair itself.
Good job, Bill.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Go ahead, Councilmember Para.
And I guess mine's maybe not so much of a question, but kind of as a comment. And I also know, and I'm hoping here in Ventura, I know even by using this, it sounds really great. But and I know a lot of parks and homes are really pushing, Ventura is really pushing, even the fire department, for people to be planting native gardens, because things like pepper trees and eucalyptus, those leaves are poisonous to the soil and to the insects. So even if we're using this great product, if we don't get back to the native plants, it kind of seems like we're going around the same, chasing our tails with these unnative trees that eventually start to poison the soil. We lose those nutrients, the magnesium, everything, all the good stuff that's in there. So I'm really hopeful that our parks here in Ventura and other places start to really look at that and put all the pieces together, because I feel like we've got some really great pieces, but we need to add everything so it continue a cycle of wholeness. So that's really all my comment for today. But thank you for the presentation. I really love the visuals.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. So Bill, I have 5 parts to my question. So I'll start here. You talked about the Limonera project. Is that a cost sharing project, or is that weight borne with the companies themselves?
No profit sharing. I mean, no cost sharing. It's been 100% paid for by Agriman. We're a privately held for-profit company, and we see where the world is going. And when I started this 30 years ago, I had no idea I'd be in this business where we're trying to mitigate, climate change or greenhouse gas emissions. We just kept turning rocks over, and it just turned out we were in the right space. But we are building these kinds of projects all over the state, in LA County, Riverside County. They're alternatives to landfilling. So we are in the space to build as many organic waste diversion facilities as we can.
And that's all on you guys.
It is.
Wow. That's commendable. So the next question is for the Ventura project, where you went ahead and worked with them on that one green space. What's next?
So we are working with the city of Ventura on their procurement. We're actually creating a new e-commerce site for them as well, where landscapers who go to get permits to do new landscapes. There's another law that you don't know about. It's called the MWILO. It's the Mandatory Landscape Water Efficiency Ordinance by the state of California, that all new landscapes have to have 6% organic matter in the soil, and or you have to put mulch down to reduce water consumption primarily. So we paired up that ordinance with SB 1383. The city has to buy compost. They don't think they can use it all because they don't have enough money in their budget to do the application component of it. So they decided to provide a subsidy to the landscapers that are going to be developing landscapes within the city. So we created an e-commerce where the city will give them like a promo code or a coupon, basically, that says, if you're going to do a landscape in the city of Ventura, we will help you and help pay for the compost you need to use in the ground to meet the MWILO standard. Then the city will get credit for their SB 1383 because they help pay for it. And then the landscaper will pay the balance, which is similar to the brokering we're doing for like the city of Atascadero. They decided they didn't want to have anything to do with it. And they said, Bill, why don't you just broker it to a farmer for us and we'll pay for it. So we had to find them a farmer that they approved, and they have to buy 1,300 tons of compost, and we get it delivered to the farmer. The farmer pays for the delivery and the application. So you're still solving the problem. So today, there's really no one way to do it. But we are looking at all the parks long-term as the sequestration components for the communities, as we're also working with forward-leaning contracts on carbon sequestration with the oil companies and the big tech companies like Microsoft and Google. Everybody wants to be carbon neutral, but they can't unless they buy carbon offsets.
Wonderful. And then it sounds like with what you're doing with farmers, it would eventually, with that soil going, getting the carbon back in it, that they could then move to maybe organic, or is that way down the line? I mean, what does it present for them on that side?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll tell you why, because we work with a lot of organic farmers. And organic farming financially doesn't lend itself to scale, if that makes sense. They're never going to be able to scale because it has to be smaller boutique, because you're fighting with the pest and the ground and the weather. And it's just a very complicated farming technique. I think there's going to be a more natural way of growing food. So if you have commercial that's using all chemicals and you have organic that's trying not to use any chemicals, there's something in between called more natural way of growing, meaning that you're repairing the soil and you're growing and you're minimizing the use of chemicals such as fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides to grow crops. I think that's where we're headed.
Okay. And then one last thing is, I know that your facility is here in our area, and there could be a possibility of having the group in small batches go out to tour your facility.
Oh yeah, you got to tour our Oxnard facility where you get to watch a trash truck unload from a residential community, go through the whole cleaning, grinding, compost process, then into the screening and blending and packaging process where you can watch the bags of soil go back out to the Armstrong nursery stores. We're the largest packager for Dr. Earth in the state of California, and it's a pretty fascinating process. It's a little bit of a dirty jobs tour, so you want to bring boots and a hat, and we'll provide you with a vest and all that good stuff, but I think you'll like it.
Very good. Thank you so much. And wonderful. I appreciate your time today and bringing us up to speed on what you're doing. You're right here in our neighborhood. So
Yeah,
thanks so
and
much for being so creative on this.
yeah, Clay, I'm bummed to see you leaving. I mean, it took us a long time to get together, and hopefully you like where you're headed. But for the rest of the group, you can get my email from Clay, my phone number, and I'm happy to share the presentation with you if you'd like.
Very good. Thank you.
I've got another question.
Yes,
Yep.
go ahead, Councilmember Baldwin.
So you mentioned just a minute ago about offsets, and I've been following some of the stories like the Nature Conservancy and others working with farmers in different parts of the country to reduce emissions, generate credits, sell those credits somewhere else in the country. Actually, you can sell it. You reduce carbon in one place, you can sell it anywhere in the world. But is there, given what you're doing, is there a way to generate carbon credits that can be sold, put into a bank? There's several companies that are doing carbon banking. Have you explored that?
Oh yeah, we are on the forefront of it. And we are looking at selling millions of metric tons of carbon sequestration through our working land carbon farming projects. And I'm really trying to get them focused on the park projects. I think that with all the mandates for the jurisdictions, we got to figure out a way to get more money into the jurisdictions, because they can't just keep trying to figure out how to raise the trash bill or the energy bills or the water bills. I mean, people are getting a little fatigued over all this. And we got to get some voluntary market money back into the communities, the private sector money to help do the right thing within the cities that they serve.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the council? All right, so at this time, let's have public comments. Is there anybody who is part of the public who's here that would like to make any comments at this time about this item? I don't see anyone raising their hand or taking themselves off of mute. Okay. Thank you so much, Bill Camarillo. And you guys deserve a big round of applause there at Agriment for what you're doing throughout the state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's fun to have a business after 30 years where you get to do good and do well all at the same time. And I'm a very lucky person. And I give back to the communities that we serve because it's the right thing to do. And I appreciate what you guys are doing, and let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you.
Great, thank you. We'll coordinate somehow with the office, maybe not with Clay, but with Alejandra to get this tour started. Yeah, super.
Please come on a tour.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. So let's move on to item number 15, which is the request for the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council to approve a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to create a program to reduce carbon dioxide emissions from existing residential and non-residential buildings. And this is a presentation by Councilmember White. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, with Clay, with your assistance, I'll get going.
Sure thing. Which of the two items that you wanted to share would you like to share first, Phil?
Let's do
Or Councilmember
the
White.
emissions pie chart.
Okay.
As I see our role on the Climate Emergency Council, we've been asked to recommend things to the County Board of Supervisors that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or as Bill Camarillo pointed out, lead to sequestration of carbon from the atmosphere. And I point out the bright blue piece of pie here on the greenhouse gas emission chart is building energy use. And it's a significant chunk. It's not as big as transportation, but it's significant. And it's interesting to look at agriculture. The green pie slice is approximately the same size, and that's what Bill Camarillo was talking about, is trying to reduce that piece of pie. So I have at previous meetings, probably 3 or 4 of them by now, come forward with proposed programs or policies that will reduce emissions from buildings. At our last meeting, we approved a policy of encouraging the county itself to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from its own county-owned buildings by incorporating electrification, by using electrical equipment, and reducing the use of natural gas, which have methane and carbon dioxide emissions associated with it. We are tasked with recommending things to the board that are not in the climate action plan and in the county general plan. As Clay pointed out in his report earlier, many of the pieces of the county's general plan relate to climate action. And so if and when the county implements the climate action plan, many things are going to get accomplished, but there are things that are not in there. And one of the areas that's not in there relates to building emissions from existing buildings. And so the proposal that I'm coming with today is for a program that would tackle reducing greenhouse gas emissions from existing buildings, both residential and commercial, within the unincorporated areas that the Board of Supervisors has jurisdiction over. And the proposal is to add staff to Alejandra's department in the CEO's office, to expand on what is already being done in that department under the 3C REN Tri-County Regional Energy Network, which is working to encourage, educate building owners and contractors on things that can be done to reduce emissions, either through energy efficiency or electrification. This is the 3C RAM program existing relates to residential buildings. I know that the county has applied for adding to that program to incorporate commercial, non-residential buildings. So the proposal today that I believe should be adopted by the Climate Emergency Council and recommended to the board would be to add additional staff, and maybe you can highlight that, Clay, there, the last sentence in there, add an additional staff to support that program, especially for educational, promotional, and outreach efforts in the new Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by the US Congress and signed into law by President Biden. There's a lot of money directed towards climate action, including money for just this program, retrofitting existing buildings by eliminating or reducing natural gas and electrifying those pieces of equipment that presently burn natural gas. And the proposal would be to have the county staff be a clearinghouse for this program to continue with what they're doing for under 3C REN, but to do more and to be a clearinghouse for available money from the state and federal governments and utilities to encourage the owners of buildings, residential and non-residential, particularly, to electrify their buildings. I want to emphasize the very bottom line there that it's voluntary, to encourage voluntary electrification. I'm not proposing that the county mandate that building owners must electrify, but to enable assistance with their doing so if they choose to do so. I think having the Inflation Reduction Act money available is huge, and if a person in the county CEO's office and Alejandra's division, sustainability division, is there to help with this program, that we can make a significant dent in emissions from existing buildings. So that's it. I hope that our council can approve this proposal and send it on to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the board. It's not in the existing climate action plan, so it's something that is not being done, and I think has merit. So I'm open to questions if anyone has questions.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember White. Are there any questions from the council for Councilmember White? So go ahead, Councilmember Baldwin.
So I'm not sure where the position would be. In my mind, it's just, this is dealing with building and safety side of the county government where they're permitting various things to be done to change processes, change over gas to electricity and what have you. So I don't know if it would be a sustainability vision area for marketing or like building and safety where the people are actually doing the work. Thought about that?
Yes, and you know, this is similar to the REACH code that was adopted in 2020 as part of the county general plan, climate action plan, which would require that new buildings that are newly constructed be built all electric, and not allowing new buildings to be built with natural gas. That is a building and safety issue because it's a change to the building code. For existing buildings, there is no similar proposal for a building code change that would require existing buildings to be converted to all electric. Instead, this is an incentive to existing building owners to do the right thing by electrifying and showing them how to do it and connecting them with available money to make that change. Now, certainly anybody doing electrification needs to pull permits, so there is a nexus with building and safety. We're about to pull out our furnace in our house here in Ojai and install a heat pump. And in fact, my contractor is coming this afternoon to get started on that project. But it is separate, and the sustainability division being the one county department that implements the county's climate action plan, I think they're the appropriate venue. And the existing 3C REN program is a good example of they're already doing that for existing residential buildings.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the council? Oh, yes, go ahead, Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you. So effectively, Councilmember White, so this is would you say this is effectively somewhat similar to Councilmember Baldwin's proposal of an enhanced education program? It's just sort of focused on the climate benefits of electrification of existing residential and non-residential buildings?
Yes, I think there's a nexus with the educational program, educating people about what should happen, what could happen, and where there is money available. So when the county implements the educational program, I would hope they include electrification as part of that. It goes further than that in that 3C REN is a place where, for example, contractors can be trained on what's available in terms of funding, and so can building owners. So yes, there is that component. Education has a lot to it. I see it as in addition to education, being a clearinghouse locally for available state and federal monies that are coming down the pike like the Inflation Reduction Act money.
Thank you. Do we have a sense in kind of in contrast with the previous recommendation that this council made about government-owned buildings? Do we have a sense of just the number of the difference in scale? How many buildings does the government own for where the previous policy kind of affected, where there's the number of buildings that are in the unincorporated area that comprise what this policy would try to affect?
The answer is yes, and it's in, I don't have the staff report available, but Clay did do some research on the number of buildings in the non-residential part of the county, and those are included in the agenda packet that went out to us for this meeting. Clay, I don't know if you have your ability to zoom in on that. I don't have that.
Is this the one, is this where there's 37,000 households, 9,300 businesses?
I think so. That's what I'm looking up, is we're trying to look at the emissions target reductions that I believe are on page, I think we're looking at page 5 of 14 for this agenda item, which would be page 70 of 79 in your packets.
Yeah, okay. And
And I can screen share that if the group would like.
that might be helpful just for
Okay.
the recording.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let me ask this. So as mentioned here, that, and this was kind of from the pie chart that you had, we would assess that 17% of the greenhouse gas emissions that we have overall are coming from buildings generally in the unincorporated areas. I should say, of the GHGs within the unincorporated areas, 17% are due to these buildings. Do we believe that because this is voluntary and because this is a requirement that a building owner would basically need to complete a full electrification of their building, do we believe that this program would be effective in addressing these targets? These seem quite aggressive, and it's unclear to me that there would be enough adherence to the policy by 2050 to achieve these type of. I'm not saying that reductions aren't good. It's just that with goals there, I'm just wondering whether that's what would actually be.
Nick, my response to your question would be, yeah, it would be hard to promise that these emission reductions will be achieved. And it states right there, these are goals, and these are goals in the county's climate action plan. And I think you could ask the same question about virtually any part of what's in the climate action plan. Are we really going to get there? But we have to start somewhere, and we have to try. And here's a sector of emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, that's really not been targeted yet. And approving this program would at least head down that road to try to get there. These are goals that are shown there, and
I don't disagree. I mean, and I'm also in agreement, a step in the right direction is better than no step. But the question is, do we have an understanding of how large that step is and what we're asking for? If it's an education, we're asking for one staff member, which is what it is, to sort of coordinate and focus areas on, as you mentioned, an untouched area of the climate action plan. I just want to make sure that we're kind of clear that we understand that it's asking for 80% reduction of this by 2050. This program is not going to do that through a voluntary effort with just coordinating from grant money, right?
I don't know where we're going to end up. It says here, if the program is successful by the deadline goals, that's what the reductions would be. I know that in my house, we're making this change voluntarily on our own dime. My wife and I, we just installed within the last month an induction cooktop and junked the gas cooktop. We've eliminated the gas water heater. We're eliminating the furnace here soon. I think there are many people that I know who are making this change and believe that they personally can make a difference on addressing climate change. I guess I'm hopeful that this is really going to take off, and that having a person in the county who's promoting this and calling attention to available money to do conversions is the right way to go.
All right, thanks. Last comment is that I'm supportive of the voluntary efforts and encouragement on it, and that if staff promotes the idea, I just want to make sure that we are being realistic about how effective this would be in GSG reduction. I think it rightly says at the beginning that it would be a low, it would have a small impact. I do in fact believe this would be a small impact, as just from these numbers, I have a hard time believing that by 2030, 41% on average of households would fully electrify to realize the GSG goals. I think that would be a challenge. But if we're realistic as to what the impact and success of this would be, then I think that's where I could be supportive.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council members? All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Councilmember Baldwin.
So a comment more than a question is that since there's money available, and I have no idea how long the money stream will continue, but if there's money available to help people make the change, it's going to be a lot more successful than if there was no money at all. And I don't know how long the money is going to last, but at least in the initial years, it seems like this would be pretty good. But again, there's no guarantee.
My question for you, Councilmember White, is in terms of, would there be incentives? Because you did talk about, some monies that are available federally. Would there be some incentives that actually get passed through or passed to then those individuals that have those residences and commercial buildings that could possibly go to electric?
That's my understanding, that the Inflation Reduction Act has money earmarked for just this kind of electrification effort on existing buildings. I don't know the details of how that's going to be carried out, but I think the county should be there in a position of saying we want it, and we want to establish this program in the county.
And then could I ask either Clay or Alejandra, so as we look at this proposal and you know what you need to scale to, especially with 3C REN and Clay leaving, does this seem to be something that would fit within your time frame?
Well, I can speak to a couple of the things on some of our programs, but Alejandro might be better suited to answer some of the things with respect to the 3C REN business plan that's coming up. So we are kind of to some of the things that Phil put in there, we are doing some of this, but not exactly in the way that he's proposed it. So this proposal looks like it's for one additional person that would have an emphasis on grant funding to get those external resources and bring them in. 3C Run is funded principally through external resources. So we have a substantial amount of funds that are coming through state level grants through the program that's administered and that used to be only available to utilities, but now can be administered by local jurisdictions as well, which is what we're doing. But the funding is distributed between 3 different counties. So there's a pretty big spread for that funding. And I wanted to mention that when we look at these, we would say that some of the things that we're really talking about here today, and Phil noted them, or Councilmember White noted them in his materials that he sent over in the proposal, but it would be programs, let me see here, COSV and COSW are really looking at those. And so they're contemplated, but it seems like what is being proposed today is kind of a twist on that to make sure that it's leveraging external funding so that bigger, broader goals can hopefully be attained. And hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, Councilmember White, on that one, but that would be my interpretation of what the aspiration is here, that take what we've got going well, make it do better and do more through.
That's exactly right.
So it's not a completely unaddressed area, but we're hoping to get more impact, more bang for our buck, more external resources for those sorts of things. And then Alejandra, would you like to comment on to what extent this is addressed in some of the other business plans or the business plans for 3C Ren that you see coming up?
Yeah, I mean, currently, yes. So we do have a residential energy efficiency, and we make sure we want to train the workforce so they can do those energy efficiency retrofits. And we do have incentives available for multifamily, single family. So we do take advantage of that. We are keeping an eye on all the federal funding coming down, and whether that's tax credits or actual incentive, we're trying to figure that out. So we do have kind of an eye on trying to figure out where we can get more funding. Residential and commercial are one of the hardest programs because it requires the person, to make that financial commitment. Sometimes like behavioral change, and the hard part about energy efficiency, which is what we do, is it's sometimes we don't think about it. We just kind of, when something breaks is when we want to repair it, and we want to just get a brand new heater as opposed to kind of thinking what's the most efficient way. So anyway, just a long answer that we have those programs. They're hard programs to implement. So any help that we can get to promote and to get people to participate is always welcome. I think encouraging behavioral change is always hard. It takes a long time. So we've had our residential program for about 3 years, mind you. That was with the pandemic and COVID, so it's not a fair measurement of our program. And it's just now starting to pick up with a lot more multifamily and single family projects. So it's getting there. Just takes us a little bit to get that up and running. So I'm always willing to take more help for our programs and kind of helping promote and encourage people to participate in them. But they are the residential program is one of the hardest ones to kind of get people to participate in.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Ferris.
I guess thank you so much for those comments. In some ways, a lot of what Alejandra and Clay have sort of talked about sort of loops back to my original question on it, which is this request kind of very much aligned with one of the original proposals Councilmember Baldwin had, which is it's a program that's worthy an investment to make these programs more effective in the ability of reducing the GSGs that come from from buildings that are in the unincorporated area. If there are, and I can't remember how many, I want to say, were there 70 buildings or so that were government owned? From what I'm trying to remember from previous discussions.
The ones that we discussed last time, I think there were approximately 148 or 150.
Okay.
That are County of Ventura facilities and buildings.
Yeah, and so that is 0.5% of the total number of, or at least, or possibly less than the total number of facilities that are just residential or business related, as documented, 37,000 plus 87. So the effectiveness of this program getting into and making that more effective with that could be just as effective of having the county deal with all of their buildings. So for that reason, it's sort of like that's where the value add can come in from a program like this, by helping to make things that are already in place more effective by greater education and incentivization. So I just want to try to relate to, do we think, are we being realistic on how effective it could be? And just looking at the parallel with the original program Councilmember Baldwin put in place helps me understand that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, do we have
And
any-
I wanted to jump in, and it looks like we may have lost Councilmember Para. And if that is the case, we no longer have a quorum,
Okay,
unfortunately, because our numbers are somewhat low today. But
well, let's go ahead and take public comments on this item number 15. Are there any members of the general public that want to make any comments at this time? All right, seeing none then, and we don't have quorum, so we can bring this back for the next agenda. Is that reasonable?
I guess we don't have an option, huh? If we can't.
I'm not even sure we can provide direction on what that is if we don't have a quorum, right? So we may have just lost our ability to.
Yeah, to do anything. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Sorry for talking so long.
No,
I think that
Okay.
staff
think we're working-
understand the basic idea that we would like this item to come back, and hopefully we have a quorum and you all can do
Yeah.
something about it.
Okay, super.
I think the fifth time is the charm.
All right.
It's the fourth time I've brought this forward. Any rate, I'm happy to come and do it again.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember White. All right, so then let's go on to item number 16, which is the council member comments and future agenda items. So would anybody like to go first? Go ahead, Councilmember Baldwin.
So I think I already talked about what went through my brain a few days ago during the Agriman presentation. But it seemed like nothing was happening with ag. And so I met with Larry Yu, who used to be the head of the Farm Advisor's Office. I've worked with him for like 30 years ago or so, over a long period of time. Brainstormed, well, what can we do? He suggested that I meet with Ben Faber, which I did. And because Larry's been away from this work for so long, although it's in his blood forever. But so I did meet, and we came up with an idea about pulling people together, kind of experts. And so I'm working on setting up a meeting with the Ventura County Farm Bureau, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Fruit Growers Lab, 2 ranchers, and Ventura County Resource Conservation District. And I've gotten some replies back. It just went out Friday afternoon, so it's a little early to get everybody maybe to come back. But my goal is to kind of have a roundtable discussion with these people to see if there's things in their minds that could lead toward getting farmers together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from their processes, as I would call it, in Ventura County. And then after the Agriman presentation, I'm getting really excited about potential. So that's what I'm working on. It was an inspiration at a wild moment, let's say. And I went after it, and hopefully something will work.
Very good. It sounds like you're on the path to creating some synergy.
I'm so out of my element.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Ferris.
Thanks. I know that we're probably not on official time here, but at least at a minimum, like, I just want to thank Clay for the service he's provided to the council, and wish him and his family well in his next endeavors. I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with you, and thank you so much for helping us as a council and on behalf of the county for all these areas that we're pursuing this mission on. So thanks again, Clay. Please stay in
Thank you.
touch.
Yes, and go ahead, Councilmember White.
Well, Mick, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure working with Clay it's been about 5 years now. First on the general plan when he was working on the planning department. And I was on the planning commission, and that included putting together the elements of the climate action plan that ultimately got in there. And it's a tough job that Clay's been doing, and that Alejandra has also been doing, and maybe more directly now with Clay gone. And that is trying to overcome the momentum of how the county departments operate, whether they have electric vehicles or not, or whether their buildings are electrified or not. And it's hard to get county departments who are feeling like they know how to do things and are kind of set in their ways, hard to lead them in a new direction and to consider that they can have an impact on global warming and climate change. So Clay's done a yeoman's job in starting that conversation with them, and I'm gonna miss you, Clay. I really have enjoyed working with you, and I wish you luck in your new ventures in Oregon.
Good luck, Clay. So I just had a thought. Since Phil has been trying to get this thing going through on buildings for a few months, and we've almost got to the vote, and you're the one who's been processing, aren't you kind of responsible for finishing it up next month?
I know where you're going, and I've got an end date, so you get what you get. But I think staff is happy to help you. This council is working on some very new territory. A lot of the substantially new stuff that came out of the general plan was climate action plan related. It was a wholly new topic that hadn't been addressed in that way. We'd had a municipal climate action plan in the past that Alejandra led in the development of that, which cut across a bunch of different agencies. But that's a whole different sort of a plan, because that's something that's talking about fleet facilities and operations, not across the community, which is the climate action plan that we've got now. So it's got a broader scope, much broader umbrella. And I think that what this council doing is really important, and it's really hard. And you're going into unknown areas where the data is incomplete or is hard to get to, or someone else has got it, and you're dealing with issues that are not always in complete control. So I really applaud the work that you all are doing, and it's been a pleasure to work with everyone. I do have an item that is related to what you were doing, though, that I wanted to make sure I share with everyone before we actually wrap up. This feeling, I appreciate the love fest, but I want to make sure I share stuff too. Councilmember White.
Yeah.
I texted Mary Ann and saying, can you come back? And she replied saying that she's trying to. Is she perhaps in the waiting room?
I do not see her in the waiting room. I can resend the credentials to her, and if she rejoins, happy to go along with what this council would like. Let me see if I've got anything.
It sounded like she's interested and willing, so.
Yeah, it may be, and it may be more of a tech thing that's out of our control. She's not in the waiting room. I haven't received any emails from her in either of any of the inboxes that I manage for the council or for myself. So I don't have anything from her to help her right now.
Okay, well, next time then.
Next time.
And I
with
want to
that-
jump on that bandwagon
Okay.
to say thank you so much, Clay. And Alejandra, you
Love
assigned
that.
to us a wonderful person from your team to really create what we've developed in the last year and a half. And so I appreciate it as the chair of the Climate Emergency Council that It's been a pleasure working with you, Clay, and you're always on point and really very interested in getting us all the education and information that we need in order to move forward with what we've been tasked to do. And so I appreciate that, because I know you've gone over, above and beyond what maybe was considered. And so I appreciate then that dedication and commitment to this team. And thank you so much for working with me this last year.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. So I assure everybody. So thank you.
Yeah,
With
so
that,
I have one more thing.
I've got one more thing, so I'm going to get to it. So what I wanted to share is that we do have end of some of the council member terms coming up, as well as election of officers coming up in the next couple of months. So I wanted to make sure to put that on everyone's radar before it actually gets here. And I'm looking at Alejandra as well as looking at the council members. So I'm going to do a quick screen share and go through the bylaws. But so this is not anything that I'm pulling from anywhere sneaky. This is directly out of the bylaws, and that's what we're going to be looking at for now. Just do that. Okay. So I'm going to Article 3 of the bylaws. And one of the things is what I'm really looking for is towards the bottom of the page, subsection E, but it's going to refer to subsections B and C. And subsection B is referring to the supervisorial district representatives. So those that were appointed for districts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And subsection C refers to those that represent our designated disadvantaged communities of El Rio del Norte, Piru, and Satacoy. And so we find those because they're identified in the general plan. And then each of those communities that's identified gets a seat. That's how the membership works. In addition to those seats, we have the 2 at-large members, but they're on a slightly different cycle. So as we look at subsection E, the term of each member position shall be 2 years. Terms of the members appointed pursuant to sections B and C, those mentioned above, shall commence on November 1 of even numbered years. Terms of the at-large members appointed pursuant to section D above shall commence on December 1 of even numbered years. A member may be reappointed for a consecutive term by the appointing authority, in this case for the district and the supervisorial district and community representatives. That's going to be the Board of Supervisors themselves, or each of those individual members. And then each member shall serve and may be removed at the discretion of the appointing authority. So that was really what I wanted to go into. These terms are ending. We're going to be communicating that these end of terms are coming up to each of our Board of Supervisors members so that they're aware of it. We also have a couple of vacancies, so it would be nice to start those terms off with folks to be able to cover for those vacancies as well. So it's a good additional prompt. So that's one of the things I wanted to let your group know about. And then in addition to that, Article 5, I think it is subsection B, is the election of officers. So the officer position shall be initially elected at the initial VCCEC meeting. The officer position shall thereafter be elected at a VCCEC meeting no later than November 30th of each calendar year commencing in 2022. Elected officers will serve for a term of one year or until their successors have been duly elected. An officer may be reelected, but no individual shall serve more than 3 consecutive terms in the same office. And again, I've highlighted in subsection A there, the only officers that this body has are the chairperson and the vice chair. So those are things that are coming up on the calendar. And so everyone should be just aware that those are ahead of us. And that was what I wanted to bring to your attention today.
Okay, so it seems as though we have, this group has one more meeting that we start with, or that we continue through October, and then possibly in November, we would start the meeting and then transition to anybody new. Is that the case?
Yes, I believe so. And additionally, in that November meeting is when I would suggest that there be an election of officers that occurs at that time.
Right, okay, all right.
And that just happens on the floor, and it's a simple majority. So it's relatively non-technical. It's probably a relatively easy agenda item.
Very good. And so then, Clay, as your last day is Thursday, then Alejandra, would we count on you to help maneuver through this time frame with maybe the changes and or new appointments perhaps from?
Yes, I will be taking over, and reaching out and putting the agendas together and everything.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, I believe we've come down to the end of our meeting. I think this is our earliest time frame and maybe several months to end here at like 1:45 to 2. So with that, then we go to item number 17, which is the adjournment of this meeting today for the Climate Emergency Council. Saying goodbye to Clay. Thank you so much. Wishing you well in Oregon. And we'll catch everybody next month.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone. Have a great day.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
All right, bye. Good
Bye,
luck, Clay.
everybody.